Thank you for everybody joining us today for our industry update. We do have some guest speakers that will be kicking off the webinar. Renee, Hoggay, and Jena Henderson will be here to talk to you a little bit about ServSafe and ServSafe Ops. I know that Renee has a few new things that are coming out that have come out with ServSafe, so please take note. And Jena will be going over ServSafe Ops, and she is available for questions after her presentation, or her contact information will be shared when we share the presentation at the end. As always, we're recording this and we'll send this out later today. And please use the chat feature for all questions. With that, I'm going to turn this over to John to kick us off.
Thanks very much, Hope, and welcome to all of you. Appreciate you being here today for the weekly update with Lauren and Zach. And also, we have our special guest today who, from our national partners, we're going to talk about some really important tools for your operations. I know Hope already introduced both Renee and Jena, so I won't do that. I'll remind you that the information today is for the benefit of our hotel and restaurant and other and travel and tourism and other industry friends. And it is off the record. So if you're with the press and want to talk with us about anything for the press, reach out to us separately for that. So with that, I'm happy to turn it over to either Renee or Jena to kick us off. Thank you.
Thanks, John. I'll take it from here. Good afternoon or good morning. This is Renee with the National Restaurant Association, and I'm the sales manager for regional accounts in the Northeast. And for many of you, you're ServSafe point person. I've been invited here today to share an overview of ServSafe and highlight a couple of the other initiatives we're working on. Online proctoring through SurfSafe Manager, as well as SurfSafe Alcohol Serve It Up campaign. Going to provide another overview of Serve Success, which is our workforce development program, and finally touch upon the Serve Success Plus Hospitality Hub. Most customers and patrons out there associate the SurfSafe brand with food and alcohol safety training. And in truth, we're so much more. Consumers have higher expectations of restaurant hygiene due to COVID-19, and we're trying to use our safety and training standards to assure consumers they can trust restaurants who are taking the proper steps to ensure their well-being. And to do this, ServSafe is offering all training solutions under one roof. So ServSafe Manager covers 10 areas of responsibility for managerial staff. ServSafe Food Handler reviews 5 areas of basic food safety for hourly and team leads. ServSafe Alcohol is a responsible alcohol service training program that may also mitigate risks, fees, fines associated with alcohol service. ServSafe Allergens drives home that critical front of house and back of house info staff need to understand in order to accommodate a guest that has allergens. And ServSafe Workplace consists of sexual harassment prevention, understanding unconscious bias, and ServSafe third-party delivery. And that equips employees and managers alike with the info they need to both manage and mitigate risk, but also promote a positive culture within the organization. And then finally, there's Serve Success, and that's that career workforce development program. And it's designed to attract, upskill, and retain talent. And at this point, I'm going to be flying through a few of these slides. Just provides a high-level overview. You're going to see on the left is the type of content that's covered, in this case for manager, and to the right, how that training is delivered in the exams. Next slide. So ANSI accreditation guidelines require manager exams to be proctored. However, as the industry still continues to face ongoing challenges with COVID-19 and employees in general, getting managers certified in person has become a big challenge. And as a result, many restaurants have been looking for alternative solutions to providing both training and exams, one of which is offering online training and proctoring their own employees' exams. And if you see up at the top is pictured how you would go about doing that from an owner perspective. But at the bottom, I have something called ProctorU. And over the summer of 2020, we began a partnership with ProctorU to administer ServSafe Manager and Serve Success exams for those companies and or students who just preferred to take the exams remotely at home. And online proctoring, for those of you who are unfamiliar with it, is a process where an examinee is monitored online in a live exam session with the proctor. And that's done with the use of software, a webcam, microphone, and access to an examinee screen. Next slide. Here's a high-level overview of Food Handler, which is considered voluntary in the state, and it takes about 90 minutes to complete. Next slide. And this is SurfSafe alcohol and dram shop laws enforced in 38 states, including Pennsylvania, which makes a business or a server who sells alcoholic drinks to an intoxicated guest strictly liable to that injured patron or guest from the intoxicated patron. Next slide. Now, this is new. The Serve It Up marketing campaign was just released about a week and a half ago, and it is designed to offer the best responsible alcohol handling resources all on one platform. Serve It Up focuses on issues such as gauging intoxication levels, checking proper ID, measuring drinks, and dealing with those difficult situations. We currently have a 20% off coupon known as Serve It Up. But those of you that are PRLA members know you already get a 20% discount for all things purchased from our website. It's one of your fantastic PRLA member benefits. We also have an ebook, and that covers current drinking trends, alcohol journey through the body, how the body removes alcohol, and knowing the risks involved. Next slide. Allergens can be life-threatening or even cause death. And as of 2021, FAIR, which is the Food Allergy Resource and Education Research, anticipates that approximately 32 million Americans have food allergies, including those for life-threatening anaphylaxis. Next slide. Now, as mentioned, traditionally, people associate the SurfSafe brand with food and alcohol safety training. And let's face it, while creating those amazing culinary experiences and a safe food environment is at our core, our association leadership recognized back in 2018 that the most important ingredient to the guest experience is actually our employees. And that's why they decided to expand beyond traditional food and alcohol safety training and came up with a new brand dubbed SurfSafe Workplace. And to the left, you see sexual harassment prevention. And that offers scenario-based learning that focuses on prevention and the impact that sexual harassment has in the restaurant and hospitality industry. In the middle is Understanding Unconscious Bias, which is an interactive training program that addresses unconscious bias and the harmful impact that it has on individuals and businesses. And all the way to the right is the third-party delivery, and that reinforces the importance of personal hygiene and providing an understanding of how to keep food safe at safe temperatures to prevent contamination during delivery. But before moving on, I'd like to take a step back and review a few of the factors that puts our industry at greater risk when it comes to harassment and bias. Next slide. So restaurant hospitality employees face the highest risk of sexual harassment out of 12 business sectors, which at its core is unwelcome sexual advances. And pictured here is the percentage variance between that of our industry and traditional workforce setting. Next slide. So this is the high-level content of what's covered in our sexual harassment prevention course. The employee version takes 30 minutes to complete, with the manager taking 60 minutes. Like all of our ServSafe training is designed by industry experts that are familiar with the elevated risk factors that our team and employees face in our environment. Next slide. Now, it's important to understand that the restaurant industry is also considered to be at greater risk when it comes to the topic of unconscious bias. And in fact, U.S. food service employees are ranked third of the highest level of unconscious racial bias in the 12 sectors. And pictured to the left are a few of the reasons why. Next slide. So here's the content that your employees would be trained on in our Understanding Unconscious Bias course. And next slide. And this is the manager content. So for both Understanding Unconscious Bias as well as sexual harassment prevention, the first 3 modules of the employee course is actually the manager course as well. Next slide. The impacts that unconscious bias and sexual harassment have on business can be long-lasting. Stories of employees exhibiting either of these can go viral as guests can pull out their phones and cameras, and it can cause immediate damage to a business reputation as well as its brand. Next slide. Pre-pandemic, the industry turnover rate was 70% or more. And at the time, we were getting a lot of feedback that while ServSafe's training and certification, which primarily focused on compliance, was making sure that people knew how to safely handle food and alcohol, yeah, that's important. But there was also a need for business acumen. it's a necessity for managers, supervisors, but even those line level employees to be cognizant of the fact that restaurants oftentimes run on very tight margins. So understanding what makes them successful is vital as well. And that's the bottom line as to why we built it. SurfSuccess is our attempt to provide hospitality operators with that support. And we wanted to develop training from the line level all the way up to management that was going to help provide some of those skills and competencies needed to driving the business side of the operation. Next slide. SurfSuccess is desired to also empower restaurant workers to take control of their own careers. Again, though, it does show employers a way to promote value within a career pathway within their own organization. So it not only reduces the cost of recruiting, hiring, and training new employees, but it's beneficial for those employees, showing them that, hey, a career can be built out of a job you already enjoy doing. And from an operator standpoint, you've got these 3 core levels of professional development, and these can be integrated lump sum or in part into your own current employee growth programs. Next slide. Here's what's covered within the SurfSuccess's learning suites. And as you see from left to right, training starts with the basics and adds in the supervisory and managerial content. Now we're in the process of building out the 6 remaining SurfSuccess restaurant manager modules. However, the supervisor and manager levels are both part of that managerial pathway. And we developed the supervisor level first because it covers most of the content that managers need from the onset, such as leadership and cost control. This level is ideal for new managers just learning to lead, but even those that have 1 to 4 years of experience. And think of that manager level as more in-depth content for those seasoned managers who take on more profound responsibilities within the organization. Next slide. So in addition to SurfSuccess's learning suites, our program also offers interactive study guides, certification exams that all adhere to industry-defined standards. In the center there is those study guides that promote adaptive learning, which feature a series of engaging and interactive questions. So it can help identify learning gaps for your team and also get them up to speed if they need any assistance. They also provide a good gauge as to whether or not that learner's actually got the knowledge base to sit for the exam. And the secure exams validate skills, competencies, and experience, which is awarded with a certified restaurant professional, supervisor, or manager industry credential. Next slide. I think we all know good talent is hard to find these days and even harder to keep, with training playing a pivotal role in attracting and retaining both. Future employees are looking for companies with professional positions that align with careers, not just jobs. And SurfSuccess and ServSafe promote this while empowering operators to cultivate a leadership pipeline with those prime candidates for future managerial roles, all by honing in on the critical business knowledge they need to promote company success. Next slide. And I'm going to wrap it up with SurfSuccess Plus, which was just released as well. And this is a subscription membership that's built for industry professionals to gain access to what matters most. It's a unique hospitality hub that supports career and professional growth, health and wellness, while also providing compelling deals and discounts. And it's geared towards restaurant, food service, hospitality, and gig workers. And pictured here are some of the program benefits. Next slide. So here's my contact info should I be of any assistance to you with your training needs. And I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much, Renee. I think we did have a few questions in the chat, and we'll go through them really quick. Bob Raffetto was asking about the posters for ServSafe and refreshing them, the look, possibly getting some refreshment, refreshing the look. I don't know if that's something you could share with the marketing team.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll take that offline with the marketing team. I know we have our show this week, so their heads are spinning at the moment, but I will definitely take that as a call to action.
No problem. And Bob, we can share, as long as you're okay with it, Renee, a copy of the slides today.
Absolutely. That's why I actually threw in all that extra content that I flew through, because I kind of anticipated people may want a to-go package, so to speak.
Okay. Allison wrote to everybody about the city of Pittsburgh's Office of Nighttime Economy. Would also create awareness with these programs. Any marketing materials would be helpful with stats on the slides. Allison, we could provide these slides for you, and then I can look at the other marketing materials that we have available through the hub and share that with you also. So I think there are some flyers with stats, isn't there, Renee?
There are, but stats honestly are constantly evolving, especially with COVID-19. So I'd have to check to see if we've got anything that's more up to date at this time than what was more pre-COVID type materials.
Okay, well, we'll look into that for you, Allison, definitely, and see what we have. And then Bob asked about the adoption of ServSafe. Where's the best place to dig into ServSafe? It actually has its own website, Bob.
Yeah.
Is it www.servsuccess.com, right?
It is, and minus the E there. So it's ServSuccess. And Bob, if you are interested in digging deeper, I can assign you what we call ServSuccess Sampler, which gives you a little kitty cocktail of our different training programs, and you can test drive it yourself.
Well, that'd be great. Renee, I can share Bob's information with you so that you can reach out to him about that.
Perfect.
Great. These are some great questions. In the interest of time, though, I'm going to pass this over to Jena so that she can cover SurfSafe Ops. But Renee, thank you so much for your time today. We appreciate you covering all of this.
You're very welcome.
Thank you so much, Hope, and thank you everyone for joining today and letting me talk a little bit about ServSafe Ops, which is really the operational component of the ServSafe brand. And really it's about taking the blocking and tackling and everyday things that you do at the location level every single day and making them more efficient. Next slide. So some of what I'm going to talk about today is this application that is fully customizable for your individual restaurant or restaurant brand. It's also applicable for really any hospitality. So we have food service located in hospitals and food trucks and individual restaurants and multi-unit brands and contract feeders. So what we really do is take what you do every day and make it work in this application. So it's about digitizing your standard operating procedures, providing access to training, enhancing the culture of food safety that is so prevalent in ServSafe, as well as providing some data on employee performance. Next slide. So here are the technology features and benefits of the application. These are what comes standard in the app. And at the end of this conversation, I'll put my contact information. So if you want to see a demo and dig a little deeper, we can set up a one-on-one meeting. I'll start with task consolidation and say what that is at its core is a checklist tool. So think daily opening, closing, midday, restroom, manager procedures. All of the things that you do specific to your establishment get digitized in a checklist in the application. What's great is that those checklists can really be set to reoccur, almost like an Outlook meeting invite. So if you have a breakfast restaurant and your opening checklist starts at 5 a.m. Monday through Friday and 6 a.m. Saturday and Sunday, we can set that checklist to reoccur during those times and be delivered to the people that need to actually complete it. So here's what I will say about checklists. I love them. I loved them when I was running restaurants. I spent 20 years in hospitality, both running restaurants and managing a larger chain. And so I understand the importance of having a list of all the things that you have to do on a daily basis. However, digitizing them isn't always enough. I think we can all agree that you get into the restaurant or you get into your office to manage that restaurant group on a daily basis, and there's a million things that take your attention away. And so how do we remember to do the tasks that we need to get done and also delegate them to our team when we can't necessarily walk them through it every single day? That's where our nudging comes in. It's the foundation upon which this technology sits, and it's a reminder. So that opening checklist I was talking about earlier, if it's set to go at 5 a.m. Monday through Friday, the people responsible for it will get a nudge reminder via notification on their telephone that says, hey, do this thing today. And those nudges aren't only for reminders for checklists. They're also a way to disseminate information to your team, either as individuals or groups by job code, or to the entire restaurant. As an example, we could send a poll nudge on a Friday afternoon that says, hey, our new rollout guide for our limited time offer menu item is happening on Monday. Please confirm that you've reviewed it. And we can actually attach that guide to the nudge, and our employees will get back to us with a yes, no. And then we can take a look at a manager dashboard and manage to exception instead of asking everybody or assuming that they got an email that we sent. I think the name of the game in today's restaurant and hospitality climate is efficiency. How can we do more with less? And using technology to help support that is one of the ways. There is an issues feature as well. And the example I use is if there's gaskets on our walk-in that are a little moldy, we would love to empower our employees to tell us about it before the health department walks in the middle of lunch. And so they can use their phone to actually take a picture of an issue on site, annotate it, mark it as urgent or normal, and then prioritize it by giving it a category: food safety, maintenance, customer service. All of those issues roll up into a manager dashboard, and they can call for service, prioritize, mark them as complete, and then look at some data that gives them some insight into what are some of the things that keep cropping up on a daily basis. There is a training portal of the application as well. And this is really all of the training that you have for your brand can be uploaded here. So think employee manuals, recipe and specifications manuals, videos on menu items. This can really help make the onboarding process more efficient. So you could assign 3 manuals and 5 videos to your staff during the first 5 days of employment. And again, get a record of it in the dashboard that shows you who has completed those things. Now, because this is a ServSafe application, we have over 80 restaurant training videos that just come standard with every app. Things like how to calibrate a thermometer, knife sharpening skills, how to chop an onion, how to deal with an upset customer. So it really can augment the training that you have as a brand level to provide some continued education to your team, which we've shown can increase tenure. There is a work text or work chat platform. It's really an internal communication tool. So we could set aside groups similar to a WhatsApp application. So we could have delivery drivers, frontline cooks, hostesses, bartenders, and they could have work conversations on a work platform instead of responding to each other through personal text. And this way they could leave end of shift notes, important things that happen. And again, as a manager, you then have access to that information. The information section is exactly what it sounds like. It is whatever you want your staff to have access to. So think there's a new holiday promotion coming up. You can put the guide for that promotion right here in the information section. In addition, we put industry information. So think updated COVID guidelines from the CDC or recalls from the FDA. The other part of the application that isn't shown on here, but is important to note, is a library. What this is it becomes like a pocket manual for your staff. So you could load all of your recipes in there, sort them by category: lunch, dinner, dessert, beverages, hamburger, salad, soups. All of the recipes for those can be collected on our secure cloud portal. And then you can assign them and use them as reference for your staff so that if they have a question about a recipe, they can simply type in the name of the recipe or category and it comes right up for them. Next slide. So some additional information. I want to note that there is no limit to users or data in this application. So for the price, you could have 100 users at your restaurant and they would all be covered under the one cost. You could have 100 checklists or you could have 5. There's no additional costs. Oftentimes we'll see in the competitive set, there's pricing set for maybe 10 users and then you pay extra, or 10 checklists and then you pay extra. Having spent 20 years in the industry, I am a firm believer of rewarding more people and more process and not having you pay for it. The exciting part is that the cost for this product is $89 per restaurant per month. But because you are a PRLA member, one of the benefits that you get is a greater than 50% discount. So it's $40 per restaurant per month. There are no onboarding fees, no training costs. And again, that is unlimited users and unlimited data. So from an onboarding perspective, and I'll put my information on the screen in a moment, you would sign up. It is a yearly contract. We would set you up with someone in our onboarding team who would really help the managers or owners of that restaurant set up the hierarchy, right? If you have 5 brands, we could have the hierarchy that works where we would have someone at the corporate office oversee them and then individual administrators at the actual restaurant level. So we will help you set that up. We will help train the managers on here's how you assign checklists and training. Here's how you send nudges. Here's how you read data dashboards. And then we will host a training session for all of your staff that says, hey, here's the new tool that you have. And here's how to use it at the restaurant level. They would then download it from the App Store or the Google Play Store, put in a unique 5-digit code associated with your establishment, and all of your information would pop up. Next slide. So while my information is on the screen, I will answer a couple of questions that I usually get, and then we can open it up for Q&A. Yes, there is absolutely a way to delete a user if they happen to quit. That all happens in the user portal. I'm sorry, in the manager portal on the back end. There is, as I said, a pretty robust hierarchy. So whether you have 1 restaurant or 5,000 restaurants, we can set it up that way. If you choose not to have employees use this on their personal device, you could always have an iPad or device at the location and they could use it as 1 user and still complete a lot of those trainings and operational checklists. And then there is a ton more information that I'm happy to share with you. So my information is here and please reach out if you have questions.
Thank you so much, Jenna. That was great. I know you've been going to some chapter meetings, and Jenna will actually be at our leadership forum on June 6th and 7th. So you could definitely come and talk with her there. I don't see any chat questions here at this point, but we'll be definitely sharing these and maybe you'll get some people reaching out to you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And thank you again, everyone.
Thanks so much, Jenna. So I'm going to turn this back over to our regular scheduled Zach and Lauren show. So here you go, Zach or Lauren, whoever wants to take it first.
Well, thank you very, very much, Hope. Appreciate that. And thank you, Jenna and Renee, for the presentation. A lot of great info. Really great to have you here. Good morning, everybody, and happy Webinar Wednesday. I hope you all have been enjoying the crisp and beautiful spring weather lately. It's a new spring. We are now post-primary election. And as you all know, the results are starting to pile up. So much to catch up on regarding the election. For those who don't know me, my name is Zak Pyzik. I am the Director of Government Affairs at the Pennsylvania Restaurant and Lodging Association. I am joined today by Lauren Brinjac, PRLA Senior Director of Government Affairs. And like I said, we've got a lot to catch up on, a lot to cover today. And with that, I am going to turn things over to Lauren to kick us off with an update on where things stand with RRF.
Thanks, Zach. Hi, everyone. So there's been quite a bit of back and forth on the RRF this week as far as when a vote might happen in the Senate. The intent from Senator Schumer is to hold a vote on legislation replenishing the RRF as soon as the Senate finishes debating and voting on the Ukraine relief package. Although there was a little bit of back and forth as to whether that vote is going to take place this week or middle or sometime next week. As of this morning, it sounds as though the current expectation is that this vote will happen tomorrow. So for those of you who might be listening to this as a recording, that'll be Thursday, the 19th, although the Senate schedule obviously can change very quickly. So it's possible that that changes as well. The specific legislation that they're going to be taking up is the Senators Cardin and Wicker Small Business COVID Relief Act of 2022. This is a $48 billion spending package, which includes $40 billion for the RRF. And this $40 billion is the amount needed to fund the existing applicants for the RRF that were not able to receive grants last year. So what is going to happen is the first and very possibly the only vote on this will be the vote to start debate on the bill. So if that does not get 60 votes, then this bill is basically filibustered, and that's pretty much the end of the road for the RRF. So all Democrats and 10 Republicans will need to vote to support allowing debate to begin on the RRF. Our national association has been saying for a while and continues to say that they do not see this as likely. We know in Pennsylvania that Senator Toomey has not been in favor of this additional spending. Our team met with him end of April in Washington, D.C., met with his office during the National Restaurant Association's Public Affairs Conference. It is possible that 10 Republicans will allow this debate to take place. However, just to manage everyone's expectations, it still seems very unlikely that we could get enough votes to pass this $48 billion spending bill that only contains $5 billion in offsets. That said, we've put out a grassroots action alert on this. We've included it in our daily update emails every evening. We are also signing on to a letter of support that's going to go to the Senate around noon today. And we will include the text of that letter in our next daily update email that will be going out this evening. If this is an issue that is really important to you, I'd encourage you to contact our senators today. This is really the last chance to push them on this issue. And if you would like us to send any additional talking points for you to use when contacting either Casey or Toomey, I'm happy to do that. Now I'm going to turn it back over to Zach to give an update on the H-2B visas.
Thanks for the update on RRF, Lauren. Appreciate it. And on visas, just this week, we received some word from our national partners, AHLA. They just wrapped up a phone call recently with Assistant Secretary Malona from the Department of Homeland Security. After some unnecessary intragovernmental delays, the interim final rule for the additional 35,000 H-2B visas will be posted in the Federal Register later this afternoon. The Department of Labor will begin accepting petitions for the additional visas today on Wednesday, May 17th, or May 18th, excuse me. And we know the additional 35,000 will not meet demand, unfortunately, but it is progress, however, and should provide some relief to many of you that utilize the program. We are pushing hard for the returning worker exemption to be included in this year's appropriations package. These visas are for U.S. employers seeking to employ additional workers on or after April 1 to September 30th. The program permits employers to temporarily hire non-citizens to perform non-agricultural labor services in the United States. The employment must be for a limited period of time, such as a one-time occurrence or a seasonal need. And with that said, we'll probably be providing more of an update in the daily update this week, and so stay tuned. But we can now move on to the state update, and I want to start with the state of the legislature. The Pennsylvania House and the Senate, after a long break, plan to return to Harrisburg next week for session, May 23rd, May 24th, and May 25th. Lauren and I will both be up at the Capitol. Lots of events on the calendar for next week. The June 30th budget deadline is right around the corner. June will be a marathon month in terms of session for our legislators, with both chambers expected to be in session most of the month. We are still expecting an early wrap up, an early close to budget season this year. There's a lot of talk amongst the public in the halls of the Capitol and coming from our membership about the American Rescue Plan funding, the dollars that remain on the table for COVID relief. The state still has about $3 billion remaining in ARP money. I think it's technically $2 billion and change, but that money is partially intended for travel and tourism in the largest and the larger hospitality community due to the losses suffered during the pandemic. So why haven't they spent it yet? That's sort of the question we've been getting most often. The problem is it's campaign season, as many of you know, and there's no way the two parties will work together on this one going into November with a very competitive governor's race and Senate race on the horizon. Yesterday, Pennsylvania held our primary election. Lots of results are starting to pile up, and that definitely will influence what gets done in Harrisburg the next couple of months. Lauren and I will discuss more about the election towards the end of this webinar. But if I were you, I would start to prepare for what will likely become what I imagine will be a very unproductive second half of the year in terms of some stuff getting done in Harrisburg. A lot of things I think will revolve around that November general election. Due to big news, for instance, surrounding Roe versus Wade, I'd expect there to be a few abortion-related issues brought up on the floor, especially closer to November and in the fall. There will be a lot of conversation around the minimum wage, but we're not expecting to actually see much momentum on that issue here in Pennsylvania anytime this year. Speaking of the minimum wage, I do want to update you all. The Pennsylvania Department of Labor and Industry announced the publication of the final form regs that will change Pennsylvania's Minimum Wage Act rules by updating how employers pay tipped workers. We've been including a lot of information, very comprehensive review of this in daily update emails over the last couple of months, but we wanted to cover it on today's webinar. The Independent Regulatory Review Commission unanimously approved the final form regs at the end of March of this year. Attorney General Josh Shapiro's office approved the regulations, and they will go into effect at the beginning of August. I believe the date is August 5th. A few areas are covered as it relates to tipped workers. There is an update to the definition of tipped employee, and that is based on inflation. The amount of tips an employee must receive monthly is being increased from $30 to $135 for the first time since 1977. Most tipped employees we've talked to have said that they far exceed this threshold. They have aligned with the federal regs as it relates to the 80-20 rule. At first, there was consideration of maybe deviating from those slightly. However, at the end of the day, they did adhere by reference to the 80-20 regs. They have aligned with the updated federal regulations that allow for tip pooling among employees, but in most cases that would exclude managers, supervisors, and business owners. And employers are prohibited from deducting credit card and other non-cash payment processing transaction fees from an employee's tip, included with a credit card payment or, again, other non-cash methods of payments. And that's something many of our members and operators we've talked to have said that they already do not do. However, we did want to just flag that for you. Lastly, the changes also include a requirement for employers to clarify that automatic service charges are not gratuities for tipped employees. The final reg also updates the definition of regular rate for salaried employees whose overtime pay is determined by a fluctuating work week method, clarifying that the purpose of calculating overtime for the regular rate is based on a 40-hour work week. A lot of restaurant employees have supposedly said, I've seen this covered in the press, that the changes do not go far enough. We've heard from some operators who say that they may go too far. Most of the members we've talked to have told us that most of the changes are already common practice, best practice, and industry standard. But nevertheless, wanted to flag some of this, get it on your radar here. We'll continue including updates on this matter in the daily update. And again, that effective date, I believe, will be August 5. And with that, going to turn things back over to Lauren for an update on some new legislation and legislation on the move.
Yeah, thanks, Zach. And just to follow up on the new regulation, I know the department is putting out, Department of Labor and Industry is putting out a lot of educational materials on this. I think they also have a couple informational sessions scheduled, and we'll make sure all of you and our members are up to date on when they're holding those, so you can participate if you'd like to. As Zach mentioned, legislature returning to session next week to move towards completing the budget, hopefully before June 30th. We will be focused on a couple of our budget related asks. Top of the list is increasing the budget line item to the State Tourism Office. We are asking for an increase to $20 million this year. And we have recently commissioned a study with tourism economics, which Zach will be talking about shortly, that I think it has put together some great data that is really going to bolster our argument in support of raising that budget line item this year. And we'll be working with the House and Senate chairs of the tourism committees on that as well. Another one of our priorities for the next several weeks is legislation increasing the licensee discount from 10 to 15%. That is a standalone bill. It's a House bill that is now in the Senate. And we are advocating in support of that and hoping that that is something that can move forward during budget negotiations this spring. But in addition, there are a number of other pieces of legislation that we're watching that have the potential to move in the next several weeks. We have PRLA supported legislation that addresses our outdated frozen dessert law. We have bills that are moving in both the House and the Senate. The House bill would repeal the frozen dessert law in its entirety. This bill passed the House nearly unanimously in April. We have a Senate version of the bill, which would rewrite rather than repeal the law, and it would require that frozen dessert tests be conducted annually instead of monthly. That came out of the Senate Agricultural and Rural Affairs Committee and received second consideration in April. So we are hopeful. We've got both a House and a Senate bill moving with little to no opposition. We'd like to see that accomplished sooner rather than later this year. There is also legislation we are looking at in the Senate, sponsored by Senator Kristen Phillips Hill. It is in the Senate Law and Justice Committee, and it would amend the liquor code, allowing licensees to use loudspeakers outside, provided the sound does not exceed 75 decibels beyond their property line. This would apply to licensees in counties class 2A through 8, so not including Pittsburgh and Philadelphia. There's a similar or the same version of this legislation in the House, where it is currently stalled. Senator Phillips Hill is hoping to get this issue moving in the Senate and potentially with a committee vote this spring. In addition, we've also been working closely with Senator Yudichek's office on tourism improvement district legislation that he will be sponsoring due to our request. His office is also planning to introduce legislation that would create a sales tax holiday for certain restaurant supplies and food ingredients. And we've also been working with Senator Lisa Boscola's office on similar sales tax holiday legislation. So lots of things in the works right now, and lots of things will start moving very quickly, especially as we start getting into mid to late June. So stay tuned. We will have lots of updates for you on our state legislative items as we get into the summer. I'd like to move now to a couple of things that we are working on at the local level. As far as Pittsburgh, we have been engaged with Pittsburgh City Council on their legislation, which would regulate Airbnb and other short-term rental units in the city. This is something that we've long advocated for a more level playing field for our hotels and bed and breakfasts as it relates to these online home sharing platforms. Not just to eliminate unfair competition, but also to ensure the health and safety of Pennsylvania residents and visitors. We submitted a comment letter to the City Council expressing our support for the intent of this legislation. We also made some suggestions on how we felt the legislation could be strengthened. Latest update here is there's going to be a public hearing on this legislation. They'll be collecting feedback from stakeholders. This is a hybrid in-person virtual hearing taking place tomorrow afternoon, and we are going to be participating in that and providing comments as well. Another update, Pittsburgh City Council last week voted to eliminate several business licenses that the Department of Permits, Licenses, and Inspections felt were either duplicative or unnecessary and burdensome both for the city to maintain, but also for businesses to maintain as well. And these licenses are the transient merchants license, the trade fairs license, the amusement places and producers license, mechanical amusement devices license, and that applies to things like jukeboxes and pool tables that you may have in your establishment, and sign maintenance certification. So like I said, Pittsburgh City Council did pass that measure last week. Also, a quick reminder about the plastic bag ban legislation that City Council passed last month. That will go into effect in April of next year. So April 14th, I believe, of 2023. The ordinance will ban almost all single-use plastic bags, and it will implement a fee of no less than 10 cents for any paper bags. And this measure is quite similar to one that is in Philadelphia in place in Philadelphia already and has just started to be enforced in Philadelphia as of, I believe, last month. And finally, last update for Pittsburgh. As you know, Pittsburgh City Council back in February approved a bill to allow restaurants to continue using sidewalks and streets for outdoor dining. That ordinance is in effect. The Department of Mobility and Infrastructure is working to finalize its guidelines to implement this ordinance and issue the new annual licenses. And we are hearing that those guidelines are likely to be finalized sometime by the end of next week. So we will be getting those finalized guidelines out to all of our members as soon as we have those, and we look forward to seeing what they've come up with. In the meantime, operators can continue using their outdoor dining setups under their current licenses and temporary permits. So now I'm going to turn it over to Zach for a rundown of what we are working on specific to Philadelphia.
Thanks, Lauren. Yeah, in Philadelphia, a lot going on. I want to start with covering just where we're at with regulations as they relate to streeteries. We unfortunately do not have much of an update or a timeline on the release of the new streetery regs. We are being told that the administration continues to work on issuing them soon, but that they want to be sure the application process and the regs are all solid so that the program can launch as smoothly as possible. We had initially heard that they may have been published early May. We were getting May 5th, May 6th as that preliminary date. We are still hopeful that our changes will be addressed. We were told that most of them will be regarding the application fee, the annual license fee, the security bond, and also something that we've really heard back from operators on is creating some sort of streamlined process with almost pre-approved templates and whatnot that operators would be able to use in lieu of hiring an architect or anything, or investing too many resources in just the app process. And so we're hopeful that the department is going to release regs as it relates to that stuff and issue those sorts of changes, but nonetheless, no substantive update here. And we're kind of just stuck in a holding pattern, unfortunately. On the styrofoam ban, we talked about this on the last webinar. We have been in touch with Councilmember Bass's office about potential legislation that they are getting ready to introduce that would ban styrofoam takeout containers. We don't have enough details to provide you with too much of an update yet, since the sponsor is still working on drafting the legislation, but it's likely that styrofoam could soon be a no-go in the city of Philadelphia. While we were at the Public Affairs Conference a couple of weeks ago in DC, one of the speakers noted that a top industry trend at the moment is eco-friendly supplies. And this definitely, based on the direction that some of our cities are headed, this is definitely something to look into and to consider. We appreciate Councilmember Bass engaging PRLA on the subject. If you have any feedback that you'd like us to consider as we continuing engaging council on this matter, please let us know. Don't hesitate to reach out. One of the common concerns that we've gotten, what happens with current inventory? We're working with the sponsor to hopefully identify a long rollout and implementation date of this legislation. That way the runway is long enough to use up existing supplies and that sort of thing. And we're also having conversations about maybe some sort of potential tax rebate or tax incentive for those operators that decide to go aggressively eco-friendly. We'll keep you posted as we hear more, and we'll share the legislation as soon as it's introduced. Transportation benefits, Councilmember Helen Gim recently introduced legislation that would require employers with 50 or more employees establish a program that diverts wages for their employees pre-tax and would allow those employees to use the money for public transit passes, van pooling, bicycle expenses, and other transportation related costs. I've talked to many of the larger employers that we represent and that are members, and I know many of them are familiar with options like this. Legislation similar to this has been implemented in cities like New York City, Los Angeles, Seattle, Washington, D.C. They've all got similar programs. Almost all of those cities have lower thresholds, though, like including all businesses. Some have 25 employee thresholds. We've had conversations with Councilmember Gim's office. They're committed at this point to keeping that at 50 employees. And so we'll let you know if there's any changes on that front. For those of you who are using payroll software, this is something that I've been told can oftentimes be streamlined for you using that software. The bill would give Philadelphians about $280 additional per month to use for transportation costs. It was, again, just recently introduced. We're waiting to get a date on a potential hearing. And last we checked in with Councilmember Gibbs' office earlier this week. They told us that they are making some changes to the legislation, and they'll keep us posted on that. I want to flag for all of you again the Philadelphia School District Employee Perks Program. The school district of Philly has sent out an invite to all Philadelphia area businesses to participate in its new Employee Perks Program. Philadelphia's public school employees have always made a difference for students in the city and families, but never more during the pandemic. And so through this program, businesses can offer special programs or incentives that would be unique and exclusive to school district employees, to their 19,000 teachers, principals, and staff, as a personal and special way to say thank you and to show them just how much they are valued and appreciated. Almost every business has something to offer. Other businesses have included discounts for things on dry cleaning, gas, auto maintenance, home repairs, arts and entertainment, hotel stays, and other similar services. Your generosity obviously helps their dollars stretch a little bit further, and they've asked us to reach out to our members about the opportunity. And so when I get a chance, I can throw that link in the chat here for that website, and also provide you with some contact info if that was something that you wanted to look more into. And with that, we're going to turn over to some of our FYIs. The first item I wanted to cover here is the PRLA Tourism study that we've been working on with tourism economics. PRLA has been working with many of our tourism partners on an update to an economic impact study that was first conducted by Tourism Economics and Adam Sachs in 2015. The study analyzes the impact that tourism has on the PA economy as it relates to things, not just tax revenue, but also to jobs and many other factors. We are really excited to share that we've received a draft of that report, and we have been working through it. There's a lot to unpack. We've been vetting it with the PRLA Lodging and Tourism Committee and other members and other stakeholders involved. We just recently talked to our DMO members about the report. Thank you to all of you who have offered feedback and input on the study. Due to the budget deadline quickly approaching, our hope is to use this to move the needle on the conversation for the budget this year. And so we're working to finalize the report and publish for sometime early next week. We'd like to move on this as soon as possible. That said, we also want to take into account any feedback or changes that might be necessary to kind of have a bigger impact here. The numbers indicate what many of us already knew to be true. Tourism is a revenue generator that deserves a serious investment, something similar to what we've seen in other states like Virginia, Michigan, and Arizona. We are working on messaging material for the report. We will be providing many of our members in the travel and tourism sectors with a social media toolkit and some infographics that you can use to help message to your legislators and to your constituencies about the results of the report. I am pleased to share that it is looking like we will have bipartisan support in the legislature for our efforts, and we'll have much more of a thorough update for you early next week in the daily update, and then of course on our next webinar. Legislative Roundtable update. PRLA hosted our third Legislative Roundtable event of the year last week with members of the Philadelphia chapter. We had close to 30 members attend, ranging from hotels to restaurants and our DMOs. We had 3 legislators at the event and 2 legislative staffers. Senator Anthony Williams, Representative Regina Young, and Representative Hohenstein were all able to attend. And thank you very much to those legislators for taking time out of their busy schedules to have conversations with our members about what's impacting our industry. And of course, thank you to our members for attending that event and taking time out of your busy schedule to have these important conversations. We had a very productive discussion about the licensee discount that our licensees receive. We discussed tourism funding, and members shared some of the challenges that they are currently facing. Our next event is scheduled with, I believe, the Lancaster chapter on June 1. Invites have just gone out for that. We've got about 6 or 7 legislative roundtable events remaining this year. So very exciting. And then next up here, the topic of the day, I know everybody wanted to talk about the primary election update. Yesterday, wasn't a busy day or anything. Obviously kidding. We are now post-primary. Buckle up, everybody, because I think we are in store for what I expect to be a very long and likely a very combative general election. Running unopposed, Attorney General Josh Shapiro, officially secured the Democratic nomination for governor. He will be the candidate, like we've known. Well, definitely since he's been in the General Assembly, and even when he served as commissioner, I know this is something that he's always been interested in. And so Shapiro is officially the Democratic nominee. The Attorney General is sick. He has COVID-19, and so he did not have a big event or give a big victory speech yesterday. I did see that he posted a video on Facebook, and of course has been sending messages out regarding the race. On the Republican side, Senator Doug Mastriano has secured the GOP nomination. Mastriano has been somewhat of a controversial candidate the last couple of weeks. He's been at odds with much of Republican leadership for years. In the past week, Republicans have worked to coalesce around Lou Barletta with no help from the party establishment. Doug Mastriano is the nominee and will be running against Shapiro for the governor's mansion this fall. Mastriano declared victory just around 10 p.m. last night. He did give a victory speech. I saw it covered by all the major news outlets, Fox News, CNN. This is obviously, as you can imagine, a very watched race across the nation for this governor's seat. While I expected him to sort of pivot towards the middle, given how moderate a candidate Shapiro is trying to be, he went a little bit of a different direction, talked a little bit about critical race theory. Obviously, the abortion conversation is something that is very prominent right now and in discussion. We've got a long road to November. It'll be interesting to see what the vibe is in Harrisburg next week. In the Senate race, I know Lieutenant Governor Fetterman secured the Democratic nomination about an hour after polls closed. He defeated Connor Lamb and Malcolm Kenyatta. On the R side, it is a very close race still between Oz and McCormick, who I think are only separated by about 1,500 votes or so. Last I looked about 30 minutes ago. Some other races I wanted to note before turning it back over to Lauren, and I know she might have an update on this subject as well. Congressman Dwight Evans did not have a problem in his primary race, securing more than 75% of the votes. Some were saying that might be a competitive race, but it looks like he will win that quite definitively. Last I looked, Senator Anthony Williams was winning his primary race, which was expected to be close. The winner of that primary is all but certain to win the general election. We did just see Senator Williams recently at our Philadelphia Legislative Roundtable. Senator Pat Brown, who is also the Senate Majority Chair of the Appropriations Committee, last I looked was trailing in his primary. It was neck to neck, 50 to 49%. Lauren and I were talking about it this morning. I think they were separated by just 100 votes or so very close there. And then big news down here in the southeast corner of the state. Longtime incumbent State Representative Pam Delisio was defeated in that primary election in Philadelphia. And then some of you know Norristown, Pennsylvania has a new state rep seat, and it looks like Greg Scott will be winning that race. That was another competitive election down here in the southeast. And Lauren, I know a lot of results are still coming in. Those down ballot races are still, they're still kind of sussing some things out. Any other update on your end in terms of some of the races we've been following?
Yeah, I think there are always some surprises and some upsets every primary season. I think, as Zach, as you noted, one of the biggest is we could very well be moving into this budget season and into next year with the top Republicans of both the House and Senate Appropriations Committees having lost their primary election. So it looks like Pat Brown, who's the majority chair of the Senate Appropriations Committee, is behind at this point as of 30 votes. So that may very well go to a recount, but he is trailing his primary challenger at this point. And it also looks as though the top House Republican of the House Appropriations Committee has a longtime legislator, Stan Saylor of York. It looks like he has lost his primary election to his challenger. So going into this budget season, I think is going to be very interesting in Harrisburg, and maybe a very different tone than we would have been expecting with these two chairs potentially not winning their primary elections. We also had a couple instances because of redistricting this year where we had two Republican legislators drawn into the same district. It looks like Ryan McKenzie of the Lehigh Valley area has won his primary over another incumbent, Republican Gary Day, in their newly redrawn district. And I think I read as of now, 9 incumbents have lost their elections. I know, as Zach noted, we were surprised to see Pam DeLisio lost her primary. It looks like Keith Gillespie lost his primary election as well. And we're still sort of tallying some of these results. A couple of the counties had some issues with counting mail-in ballots. So I think we're going to have a better picture and kind of these results finalized towards the end of this week. But I think given all of this election talk, it really is a good segue into talking briefly about PRLA's Political Action Committee. With this being election season, Zach and I are receiving requests from legislators for campaign funds, for fundraiser requests. Every week we're receiving dozens of calls and requests. My phone has been ringing this morning with fundraiser requests. That's why I've been on and off mute. One of the best ways that all of you can help us help you is to contribute to the PAC. It allows us to help the legislators who understand and care about your industry, who are interested in our opinions on the types of legislation that can help you make your businesses stronger, or even keep government out of your businesses to the extent that you need that as well. So I would strongly encourage all of you, if you are thinking about contributing to the PAC, the best time to do that is definitely right now. And maybe we can put the link in the chat to where you can go to our website to contribute. That said, that's about all I have for the moment. Happy to answer any questions anyone has. And if not, I will turn it back over to Hope and or John.
Thank you, Lauren. I think there were some questions in the chat, but I think Zach was answering some of them too. So
Okay.
you guys could just check it out and see if there's any more once I get through this. And we will go through this a little quick. I know we've been longer today than usual. Our last mental health and wellness session is going to be held virtually on the 19th. So please be sure to join that session. They've been some really great sessions, really good discussion points, and I think it's helpful for your business. And our leadership forum is coming up on June 6 and 7. We have some dynamic speakers coming in. I think we have like 90 some people already signed up for it. So please come and join us on those 2 days in at the Corp Factory Hotel, and we will look forward to seeing everybody in person. At the next slide is just coming up with some of the chapter meetings that are coming up. We do have 2 live meetings coming up, one in the Northeast today and one in the Central chapter at Hidden Stills Spirits next Monday. And then the Legislative Roundtable in Lancaster is coming up on June 1st. So please be sure to sign up for these meetings. And with that, I will just end that. If you are looking for classes or ServSafe training, we do have a full schedule up on our website. Under the calendar of events, you can register for classes or register for online courses, whichever is better for your training efforts. And I think Renee covered all the rest of it very well at the beginning of this, so I'm not going to go through all the different training products. But with that, I'm just going to turn it back over to Zach and Lauren and see if there were any other questions that needed to be sussed out.
Thanks, Hope. I was going through the chat here. I did notice a few questions. Bob, thank you for the comments regarding the tipped wage, minimum wage act changes. I appreciate that. Just some background here. These are regulatory changes that are being pushed through. This conversation on all of this started months ago, and PRLA kind of first engaged in the process back in the fall and in kind of the winter and around December and the start of the new year. We worked very closely with many of the other business groups that operate in Harrisburg, and we were in very close touch with the chairs of the labor and industries committees. We did, at the end of the day, in coordination with those groups, we did end up opposing the changes. Our position was from a procedural point of view, from a process standpoint, given the significant amount of changes that were being made. the feedback we got from the Government Affairs Committee was that, look, these are changes that should be considered by the Pennsylvania legislature. The legislature is the body that is tasked with kind of what we believe to be this more substantive decision making. And so that's kind of the grounds we use to challenge the regulations. At the end of the day, most of these changes, including the feedback we received on the credit card processing fees, we were being told were kind of best practice, common practice in the industry. I think you also asked here what the specific note was on the credit card processing stuff. And so I threw that in the chat. This is language from the governor's website. It includes a prohibition on employers deducting credit card processing transaction fees from an employee's tip included with a credit card payment. And so again, when we engage members, most of the operators we talk to have said that this isn't something that they're currently doing at this point. Nevertheless, we did still go on record opposing the changes in the sense that we were opposing them from a process point of view. And Lauren, John, not to put either of you on the spot, but I know you were both part of this process. Do you have anything to add to that? Or?
Well, the only thing I'll say on the credit card charge is being charged back to the tipped employee. This has become a very uncommon practice. And Pennsylvania is one of the very few states that still allowed it, actually. And particularly in this day and time when it is so difficult to get and keep workers anyway, our government affairs team and the people that we talked with certainly were not opposed to the concept that employers probably should not be passing along these charges to the employees. If it was something that the government was just assessing another cost on employers, that would be one thing. But where we would essentially be assessing a cost on employees, and again, very few restaurants still do it. So that was the kind of the background on that, why that wasn't a big issue. Overall, as Zach correctly points out, most of the changes that have been made in Pennsylvania by regulation are things that more closely align with federal regulations. So there was not a lot of things in here that made it really much more difficult than it already was for us.
And with that, I'm just going through here. Thank you, Steph, for adding the link to the pack. And then Bob, I'm just seeing your other comment here. And again, I know you and I have a phone call scheduled this afternoon, and I could give you more background on this when we catch up. And I can even share with you the comments that PRLA submitted on this matter back in, I think it probably was early this year or December of 2021. And I think we've hit all the questions here. And so with that, thank you all very much for tuning in today. I'll throw my contact info in the chat here. Always happy to talk offline if we can be helpful. And Hope, John, we could turn it back over to you guys.
Thank you, Hope, and for being the host today. Thanks very much to our partners in Washington, Renee and Jena. And of course, thanks, Lauren and Zach, for the terrific update. And to all of you for tuning in. We'll see you again in a couple of weeks.